November 24, 1971. Somewhere beneath this canopy, a phantom was born. He called himself D.B. Cooper, but who was he really? A desperate criminal, a cunning gambler, or just a man out for a walk in the sky? He vanished like smoke, swallowed by the wilderness, leaving behind a trail of clues, theories, and a mystery that has haunted us for decades. Did he survive? Did he find what he was looking for? Or did he become another ghost in the woods, lost to the legend of his own audacious escape? Our journey begins at the heart of the Pacific Northwest, where the skies held secrets and the landscape played witness to a daring act. D.B. Cooper is a media epithet for an unidentified man who hijacked Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a Boeing 727 aircraft, in United States airspace on November 24, 1971. During the flight from Portland, Oregon, to Seattle, Washington, the hijacker told a flight attendant he was armed with a bomb, demanded $200,000 in ransom, equivalent to $1,400,000 in 2022, and requested 4 parachutes upon landing in Seattle. After releasing the passengers in Seattle, the hijacker instructed the flight crew to refuel the aircraft and begin a second flight to Mexico City, with a refueling stop in Reno, Nevada. About 30 minutes after taking off from Seattle, the hijacker opened the aircraft's aft door, deployed the staircase, and parachuted into the night over southwestern Washington. The hijacker has never been found or conclusively identified. In 1980, a small portion of the ransom money was found along the banks of the Columbia River near Vancouver, Washington. The discovery of the money renewed public interest in the mystery, but yielded no additional information about the hijacker's identity or fate, and the remaining money was never recovered. The hijacker identified himself as Dan Cooper, but a reporter confused his name with another suspect, and the hijacker subsequently became known as D.B. Cooper. For 45 years after the hijacking, the Federal Bureau of Investigation maintained an active investigation and built an extensive case file, but ultimately did not reach any definitive conclusions. The crime remains the only unsolved case of air piracy in the history of commercial aviation. The FBI speculates Cooper did not survive his jump, for several reasons: the inclement weather on the night of the hijacking, Cooper's unsuitable clothing and lack of proper skydiving equipment, the heavily wooded area into which he jumped, his apparent lack of detailed knowledge of his landing area, and the disappearance of the remaining ransom money, suggesting it was never spent. In July 2016, the FBI officially suspended active investigation of the Northwest hijacking case, although reporters, enthusiasts, professional investigators, and amateur sleuths continue to pursue numerous theories for Cooper's identity, success, and fate. Cooper's hijacking, and several imitators in the following year, immediately initiated major upgrades to security measures for airports and commercial aviation. Metal detectors were installed at airports, baggage inspection became mandatory, and passengers who paid cash for tickets on the day of departure were selected for additional scrutiny. Boeing 727s were retrofitted with eponymous Cooper vanes, specifically designed to prevent the aft staircase from being lowered in flight. By 1973, aircraft hijacking incidents had decreased, as the new security measures dissuaded would-be hijackers whose only motive was money. Cooper was an enigma. Calm, polite, even charming with the crew. He ordered bourbon, paid for his newspaper, and seemed unfazed by the gravity of his actions. Was he a seasoned criminal, a desperate gambler, or simply a man pushed to the edge? The investigation would reveal a meticulous planner, who knew the plane's layout, escape routes, and even anticipated the refueling delay that bought him crucial time. Using cash, the man bought a one-way ticket on Flight 305, a 30-minute trip north to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. On his ticket, the man listed his name as Dan Cooper. Eyewitnesses described Cooper as a white male in his mid-40s, with dark hair and brown eyes, wearing a black or brown business suit, a white shirt, a thin black tie, a black raincoat, and brown shoes. Carrying a briefcase and a brown paper bag, Cooper boarded Flight 305, a Boeing 727-100, FAA registration N467 US. Cooper took seat 18E in the last row and ordered a drink, a bourbon and 7-Up, from the flight attendant. With a crew of 6, consisting of Captain William A. Scott, First Officer William Bill J. Radizak, Flight Engineer Harold E. Anderson, and flight attendants Alice Hancock, Tina Mucklow and Florence Schaffner, and 36 passengers aboard, including the hijacker, Flight 305 left Portland on schedule at 2:50 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Shortly after takeoff, Cooper handed a note to flight attendant Schaffner, who was sitting in the jump seat at the rear of the plane, directly behind Cooper. Assuming the note was a lonely businessman's phone number, Schaffner dropped the note unopened into her purse. Cooper then leaned toward her and whispered, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Schaffner opened the note. In neat, all-capital letters printed with a felt-tip pen, Cooper had written, "Miss, I have a bomb in my briefcase and want you to sit by me." Schaffner returned the note to Cooper, sat down as he requested, and quietly asked to see the bomb. He opened his briefcase, and she saw 2 rows of 4 red cylinders, which she assumed was dynamite. Attached to the cylinders were a wire and a large, cylindrical battery, which appeared to resemble a bomb. Cooper closed the briefcase, and told Schaffner his demands. She wrote a note with Cooper's demands, brought it to the cockpit, and informed the flight crew of the situation. Captain Scott directed her to remain in the cockpit for the remainder of the flight and take notes of events as they unfolded. He then contacted Northwest Flight Operations in Minnesota, and relayed the hijacker's demands. Cooper requests $200,000 in a knapsack by 5 p.m. He wants 2 front parachutes, 2 back parachutes. He wants the money in negotiable American currency. By requesting 2 sets of parachutes, Cooper implied that he planned to take a hostage with him, thereby discouraging authorities from supplying non-functional equipment. With Schaffner in the cockpit, Flight Attendant Mucklow sat next to Cooper to act as a liaison between him and the flight crew in the cockpit. He then made additional demands. Upon landing in Seattle, the fuel trucks must meet the plane and all passengers must remain seated while she brought the money aboard. He said he would release the passengers after he had the money. The last items brought aboard would be the 4 parachutes. Captain Scott informed Seattle-Tacoma Airport Air Traffic Control, ATC, of the situation, who contacted local police and the FBI. The passengers were told their arrival in Seattle would be delayed because of a minor mechanical difficulty. Donald Nyrop, the president of Northwest Orient, authorized payment of the ransom and ordered all employees to cooperate with the hijacker and comply with his demands. For approximately 2 hours, Flight 305 circled Puget Sound to give Seattle police and the FBI sufficient time to assemble Cooper's ransom money in parachutes, and to mobilize emergency personnel. Captain Scott informed Seattle-Tacoma Airport Air Traffic Control, ATC, of the situation, who contacted local police and the FBI. The passengers were told their arrival in Seattle would be delayed because of a minor mechanical difficulty. Donald Nyrop, the president of Northwest Orient, authorized payment of the ransom and ordered all employees to cooperate with the hijacker and comply with his demands. For approximately 2 hours, Flight 305 circled Puget Sound to give Seattle police and the FBI sufficient time to assemble Cooper's ransom money in parachutes and to mobilize emergency personnel. During the flight from Portland to Seattle, Cooper demanded that Mucklow remain by his side at all times. She later said that he appeared familiar with the local terrain. While looking out the window, he remarked, "Looks like Tacoma down there," as the aircraft flew above it. He also correctly noted McChord Air Force Base was only a 20-minute drive from Seattle-Tacoma Airport. She later described the hijacker's demeanor. Cooper was not nervous. He seemed rather nice and he was not cruel or nasty. While the plane circled Seattle, Mucklow chatted with Cooper and asked why he picked Northwest Airlines to hijack. He laughed and replied, "It's not because I have a grudge against your airlines, it's just because I have a grudge," then explained that this flight simply suited his needs. He asked where she was from. She answered that she was originally from Pennsylvania, but was living in Minneapolis at the time. Cooper responded that Minnesota was very nice country. She asked where he was from, but he became upset and refused to answer. He asked if she smoked and offered her a cigarette. She replied that she had quit, but accepted the cigarette. The $200,000 ransom was received from Seattle First National Bank in a bag weighing approximately 19 pounds. The money, 10,000 unmarked $20 bills, most of which had serial numbers beginning with L, indicating issuance by the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, 36, was photographed on microfilm by the FBI. Seattle police obtained the two front, reserve, parachutes from a local skydiving school and the two back, main, parachutes from a local stunt pilot. Captain Scott was informed the parachutes had been delivered to the airport, and notified Cooper they would be landing soon. At 5:46 Pacific Standard Time, Flight 305 landed at Seattle-Tacoma Airport. With Cooper's permission, Scott parked the aircraft on a partially lit runway, away from the main terminal. Cooper demanded that only one representative of the airline approach the plane with the parachutes and money, and the only entrance and exit would be through the aircraft's front door via the mobile air stairs. Northwest Orient Seattle Operations Manager, Al Lee, was designated to be the courier. To avoid the possibility that Cooper might mistake Lee's airline uniform for that of a law enforcement officer, he changed into civilian clothes for the task. With the passengers remaining seated, a ground crew attached the mobile staircase. Per Cooper's directive, Mucklow exited the aircraft through the front door, and retrieved the ransom money. When she returned, she carried the money bag past the seated passengers to Cooper in the last row. Cooper then agreed to release the passengers. As they debarked, Cooper inspected the money. In an attempt to break the tension, Mucklow jokingly asked Cooper if she could have some of the money. Cooper readily agreed, and handed her a packet of bills, but she immediately returned the money and explained accepting gratuities was against company policy. She said Cooper had tried to tip her and the other two flight attendants earlier in the flight with money from his own pocket, but they had each declined, citing the policy. With the passengers safely debarked, only Cooper and the 6 crew members remained on board. In accordance with Cooper's demands, Mucklow made 3 trips outside the aircraft to retrieve the parachutes, which she brought to him in the rear of the plane. While Mucklow brought aboard the parachutes, Schaffner asked Cooper if she could retrieve her purse, stored in a compartment behind his seat. Cooper agreed and told her, "I won't bite you." Flight attendant Hancock then asked Cooper if the flight attendants could leave, to which Cooper replied, "Whatever you girls would like," so Hancock and Schaffner debarked. When Mucklow brought the final parachute to Cooper, she gave him printed instructions for using the parachutes, but Cooper said he didn't need them. A problem with the refueling process caused a delay, so a second truck and then a third were brought to the aircraft to complete the refueling. During the delay, Mucklow said Cooper complained the money was delivered in a cloth bag instead of a knapsack as he had directed, and he now had to improvise a new way to transport the money. Using a pocket knife, Cooper cut the canopy from one of the reserve parachutes, and stuffed some of the money into the empty parachute bag. An FAA official requested a face-to-face meeting with Cooper aboard the aircraft, but Cooper denied the request. Cooper became impatient, saying, "This shouldn't take so long, and, let's get this show on the road." He then gave the cockpit crew his flight plan and directives, a southeast course toward Mexico City at the minimum airspeed possible without stalling the aircraft, approximately 100 knots, 185 kilometers per hour, 115 miles per hour, at a maximum 10,000 foot, 3,000 m, altitude. Cooper also specified the landing gear must remain deployed, the wing flaps must be lowered 15 degrees, and the cabin must remain unpressurized. Around 7:40 p.m., Flight 305 took off, with only Cooper, Mucklow, Captain Scott, First Officer Radazak, and Flight Engineer Anderson aboard. Two F-106 fighters from McChord Air Force Base and a Lockheed T-33 trainer, diverted from an unrelated Air National Guard mission, followed the 727. All three jets maintained S flight patterns to stay behind the slow-moving 727 and out of Cooper's view. After takeoff, Cooper told Mucklow to lower the aft staircase. She told him and the flight crew she feared being sucked out of the aircraft. The flight crew suggested she come to the cockpit and retrieve an emergency rope with which she could tie herself to a seat. Cooper rejected the suggestion, stating he did not want her going up front or the flight crew coming back to the cabin. She continued to express her fear to him, and asked him to cut some cord from one of the parachutes to create a safety line for her. He said he would lower the stairs himself, instructed her to go to the cockpit, close the curtain partition between the coach and first-class sections, and not return. Before she left, Mucklow begged Cooper, please take the bomb with you." Cooper responded he would either disarm it or take it with him. As she walked to the cockpit and turned to close the curtain partition, she saw Cooper standing in the aisle tying what appeared to be the money bag around his waist. From takeoff to when Mucklow entered the cockpit, 4 to 5 minutes had elapsed. For the rest of the flight to Reno, Mucklow remained in the cockpit, and was the last person to see the hijacker. Around 8 p.m., a cockpit warning light flashed, indicating the aft staircase had been deployed. The pilot used the cabin intercom to ask Cooper if he needed assistance, but Cooper's last message was a one-word reply, no. The crew's ears popped from the drop in cabin air pressure from the stairs being opened. At approximately 8:13 p.m., the aircraft's tail section suddenly pitched upward, forcing the pilots to trim and return the aircraft to level flight. In his interview with the FBI, co-pilot Bill Radazak said the sudden upward pitch occurred while the flight was near the suburbs north of Portland. With the aft cabin door open and the staircase deployed, the flight crew remained in the cockpit, unsure if Cooper was still aboard. Mucklow used the cabin intercom to inform Cooper they were approaching Reno, and he needed to raise the stairs so the plane could land safely. She repeated her requests as the pilots made the final approach to land, but neither Mucklow nor the flight crew received a reply from the hijacker. At 11:02 p.m., with the aft staircase still deployed, Flight 305 landed at Reno Tahoe International Airport. FBI agents, state troopers, sheriff's deputies, and Reno police established a perimeter around the aircraft, but fearing the hijacker and the bomb were still aboard, did not approach the plane. Captain Scott searched the cabin, confirmed Cooper was no longer aboard, and after a 30-minute search, an FBI bomb squad declared the cabin safe. In addition to 66 latent fingerprints aboard the airliner, FBI agents recovered Cooper's black clip-on tie clip, and 2 of the 4 parachutes, one of which had been opened and had 3 shroud lines cut from the canopy. FBI agents interviewed eyewitnesses in Portland, Seattle, and Reno, and developed a series of composite sketches. Local police and FBI agents immediately began questioning possible suspects. Acting on the possibility the hijacker may have used his real name, or the same alias in a previous crime, Portland police discovered and interviewed a Portland citizen named D.B. Cooper. The Portland Cooper had a minor police record, but was quickly eliminated as a suspect. In his rush to meet a deadline, reporter James Long confused the man with the name used by the hijacker. United Press International Wire Service reporter Clyde Jabin republished Long's error, and as other media sources repeated the error, the hijacker's pseudonym became D.B. Cooper. Due to the number of variables and parameters, precisely defining the area to search was difficult. The jet's airspeed estimates varied, the environmental conditions along the flight path varied with the aircraft's location and altitude, and only Cooper knew how long he remained in free fall before pulling his ripcord. The Air Force F-106 pilots neither saw anyone jumping from the airliner, nor did their radar detect a deployed parachute. Moreover, a black-clad individual jumping into the moonless night would be difficult to see, especially given the limited visibility, cloud cover, and lack of ground lighting. The T-33 pilots did not make visual contact with the 727. On December 6, 1971, FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover approved the use of an Air Force State Route 71 Blackbird to retrace and photograph Flight 305's flight path, and attempt to locate the items Cooper carried during his jump. The State Route 71 made 5 flights to retrace Flight 305's route, but due to poor visibility, the photography attempts were unsuccessful. Using fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters from the Oregon Army National Guard, the FBI coordinated an aerial search along the entire flight path, known as Victor 23 in U.S. aviation terminology but Vector 23 in most Cooper literature, from Seattle to Reno. Although numerous broken treetops and several pieces of plastic and other objects resembling parachute canopies were sighted and investigated, nothing relevant to the hijacking was found. Shortly after the spring thaw in early 1972, teams of FBI agents aided by some 200 soldiers from Fort Lewis, along with United States Air Force personnel, National Guardsmen, and civilian volunteers, conducted another thorough ground search of Clark and Cowlitz counties for 18 days in March, and then another 18 days in April. Electronic Explorations Company, a marine salvage firm, used a submarine to search the 200-foot, 61 m, depths of Lake Merwin. 2 local women stumbled upon a skeleton in an abandoned structure in Clark County. It was later identified as the remains of Barbara Ann Derry, a teenaged girl who had been abducted and murdered several weeks before. Ultimately, the extensive search and recovery operation uncovered no significant material evidence related to the hijacking. Based on early computer projections produced for the FBI, Cooper's drop zone was first estimated to be between Ariel Dam to the north and the town of Battle Ground, Washington, to the south. In March 1972, after a joint investigation with Northwest Orient Airlines and the Air Force, the FBI determined Cooper probably jumped over the town of La Center, Washington. In 2019, the FBI released a report indicating that about 3 hours after Cooper jumped, a burglary was reported at a small grocery store near Hessen, Washington, an unincorporated community located within the calculated drop zone that Northwest Airlines presented to the FBI. The burglar was noted by the FBI to have taken only survival items such as beef jerky and gloves. D.B. Cooper's hijacking was more than just a robbery. It was a slap in the face of authority, a challenge to logic and reason. He outsmarted the system, vanished without a trace, and left behind a mystery that continues to tantalize. His story is a reminder that even in the age of technology and surveillance, some secrets can still vanish without a whisper. The D.B. Cooper case has spawned a multitude of theories about his identity, motive, and ultimate fate. Here's a deeper exploration of some prominent ones. The skydiving instructor, William J. Cook, a skydiving instructor with financial troubles, was investigated due to his expertise and suspicious timeline. However, lack of concrete evidence and conflicting alibis ultimately weakened this theory. The Vietnam veteran, Ralph Irwin Rose, a Vietnam veteran with parachute experience, faced financial difficulties and harbored anti-establishment views. While some circumstantial evidence exists, it's inconclusive. The disgruntled employee, some theorize Cooper was an airline insider, familiar with security procedures and escape routes. While this could explain his planning, specific individuals haven't been convincingly linked to the crime. The unknown, this remains the most likely scenario, given the lack of definitive evidence pointing towards any specific individual. Many believe Cooper was an intelligent, organized criminal who carefully planned the hijacking and covered his tracks well. The most obvious motive, Cooper clearly aimed for the $200,000 ransom. Whether he intended to keep it or disappear into a new life remains unclear. Some theorize Cooper's act was a political statement against authority or the Vietnam War. However, no concrete evidence supports this, and his calm demeanor during the hijacking contradicts the image of a radical protester. Some speculate Cooper was motivated by the thrill of the challenge, seeking a daring escape and living on the edge. This psychological angle adds another layer to the mystery. Cooper's hijacking significantly impacted aviation security measures. Reinforced cockpit doors, stricter passenger screening, and baggage checks were implemented to prevent similar incidents. His story has captured the public imagination for decades, inspiring books, movies, TV shows, and even video games. He remains a symbol of daring individualism and unsolved mysteries. The case continues to be an active FBI investigation, and new leads occasionally emerge. The unsolved nature and lack of closure contribute to the enduring fascination with Cooper. D.B. Cooper. A flicker in the night, a ghost in the mountains. His footprints fade, swallowed by the earth, his voice carried on the wind. But the echo remains, a whisper in the wilderness, a question mark etched in the sky. He took the leap, a gamble against fate. Gravity his dance partner, the unknown his destination. Did he embrace the fall, or fear the landing? Did he find solace in the silence, or scream defiance at the stars? In the endless chasm of the night, only he knew the answer. And it vanished with him, a secret buried in the clouds, another story lost to the heavens. D.B. Cooper. The enigma. The outlaw. The folk hero. He became a legend, spun in campfire tales and barroom whispers. His face on billboards, his story in headlines, a phantom forever etched in the American zeitgeist. Did he disappear into the shadows, or live a life in disguise? Did he find peace, or forever run from the echo of his crime? We may never know, but the mystery endures, a spark igniting our imagination, a reminder that some stories refuse to be buried.